Hello, how are you? I hope everyone is gesund, stark, mofelig, begashmis und beruchnis. I hope everyone is healthy, strong, and happy physically and spiritually. Today is Yud Gimel Sivan, Erev Shabbos Kodesh, Parshas Naso. First, we'll start with Tzedakah, Gdelet Tzedakah Shemakarev Sagula, Mashiach should come now. Then we're going to say a prayer which is directly related to the Parsha of the week. In this week's Parsha, we have the mitzvah that Kohanim have to bless the Yidden. And as we will say from the prayers that we say in the Shalosh HaGolim by Birchas Kohanim, and the Chazan says, and they repeat it, and the Kohanim say, Baruch atah Hashem, Elokeinu melech haolam, blessed be Hashem, b'kedushosei shel Aaron, who has sanctified us, the Kohanim, with the sanctity of Aaron, v'tzivonu, and commanded us, l'vorech es Am Yisrael bi'avo, and he commanded us to bless his people Israel with love. So in this week's Parsha, we have the wording, the Yivarecha Hashem v'yishmerecha, Yor Hashem panav elecha v'chunecha, Yisa Hashem panav elecha v'yosim l'cha shalom. This is the blessing which the Kohanim bless the Jewish people. In today's day and age, in Chutz La'aretz, it happens in the Shalosh HaGolim, when the Kohanim bless us. But we say these verses every single morning, right after Birchas HaShachar, right after Birchas HaTorah. So we see how essential it is, that straight away, before we daven Shachas in the morning, we already said these verses. And we also say it in Shemon Esrei, every day by Shachas, Birchas Kohanim, and sometimes by Mincha. So the truth is, I'm not going to do it justice. I feel terrible. The time is very, very late. It's a short Friday here. So we're going to have to make it short. This is going to be today more like a fabringen than a shir. But I can't help myself. When I see blessings, and everyone today needs blessings. Everybody today wants blessings. I don't think there's a person in the world who feels completely content. Not feeling content because he's greedy, but because there's so many areas where we need bonei chayim mezoni b'mazel tal. You need mazel tov. You need brachas. We're asking for brachas. Hashem understood that we need brachas, and therefore there's birchas kohanim. So first, I'm going to say that the basis, what triggered me to speak about this, is Sikha from the Rabbi, Chelik Lamed Gimel 33 Bamidbar Naso Beis, which we'll first say what the Rebbe says in the Sikha, the point, then we might go back to it in the end. The Rebbe asks a question that there already been many brachas before in the Torah, before these birchas kohanim. The Jews got blessings, and already written before blessings, that if they do what the Eibishter wants, like in B'chokos Telechu, v'nasati yishmeichem b'itam, which is already before in Parshas B'chokosai. What's the novelty of these blessings? So the Rebbe explains that over here, we're talking about blessings that are unconditional and infinite, which means way beyond standard, way beyond natural resources, something supernatural, something miraculous. That's what it means over here. And the Rebbe explains that's why v'yishmerecha, Rashi says v'yishmerecha means that there shouldn't be theft. And the Rebbe explains how over here, the blessing of v'yishmerecha, there shouldn't be a theft, comes immediately after yivarechacha, because over here when it says yivarecha she'is baruchu nechasecha, that you'll have many possessions, it doesn't mean just a regular level of possessions. It means an abundance. It means humongous. It means epic. So therefore you become a target. You know, like when you're an important person, you need security. When somebody's a billionaire, you really have to worry that there are people that are going to be interested in scamming you, and ripping you off, and stealing from you. So therefore comes the bracha afterwards, v'yishmerecha, that nothing of that should happen to you, even though you'll be an amazing target, because you're going to be supernaturally wealthy. That's the point that the Rebbe brings out in the Sikha, see there, and I'm going to hopefully quote it at the end, what it means on a certain level. But before that, just to bring a raya to what the Rebbe is saying, is the Balaturim right away on the Pasuk, Yivarechacha, Hashem, V'yishmerecha, he says two things that when you learn Chassidus, and this is the point of the Yishurim, to bring out how in the light of Chassidus things become so much more richer. The Baal Turim says in the words Yivarecha Hashem v'Yishmerecha, Hascholas HaTeivos Oila Chavav, the Yud and the K and the Vav equals 26, which is the numerical number of Keneged Hashem Shel Arba Isis, which is equal to that of the Shem Havaya. That's what it means of Hashem Shel Arba Isis, Yud K Vav K. So then you can ask, what do you mean? The Pasuk himself says it 3 times. Yivarech Hashem v'Yishmerecha, Yer Hashem Ponev Elecha v'Yichunecha, Yisra Hashem Ponev Elecha v'Yosem L'Chasholm. It says Shem Havaya, Yud Kei Vav Kei, already 3 times. Why is the Baal Turim mentioning it over here? And he continues, he sees your question, and then he says, V'yesh boi, and then he says, V'soif HaTeivos, in the first pasuk, Yivarech Hashem v'Yishmerecha, the end letters of each word is Chaf, Hey, Chaf. Yivarecha ends with a Chaf, Hashem ends with a Hey, and v'Yishmerecha ends with a Chaf. Oila Mem Hey, 45, Keneged Hashem Shel Ma Teivos, which corresponds to Shem Ma. Okay? V'zeu Hashem Yishmetzeischa v'yecha. Hashem guards you as you depart. Your departure and your arrival. What the Baal Turim is trying to say over here is that even straight away, in the first of the brachas of Yivarech Hashem v'Yishmerecha, there's already Shem Havaya in the first letter, Beremes, because we're counting all the first letters, we get 26, and also from the final letters. So in other words, he means to say from the beginning of the blessings and the end of the blessings, we get the idea of Shem Havaya, which is a higher name. So I want to bring out that when you learn Chassidus, it says about Shem Havaya, that Shem Havaya is called Shem HaMeyuchad, the united name, Shem HaMeferish, the explicit name, and Shem HaMeferish, the explicit name, Shem HaMeyuchad, and Shem HaEtzem, and the name of the essence. So without elaborating and going to a very deep discourse in Chassidus now, we say the Shem Havaya, and there's the other Shemus. We spoke about this probably many times before. The difference is that every other name of Shem of the Eibishter refers to a concept that we understand, which means that it's a definition, it's a word, it's a meaning which is related to the world. In other words, it has some limitations. So if we say Hashem is our Father, Avinu, we know what the word Avinu means. Malkeinu, we know what the word Malkeinu means. Hashem is our Father, Hashem is our King. Obviously, it's not like a physical king. Obviously, it's not like a physical father. But the concept, the word has meaning, has definition. So therefore, ultimately, it's related to something of this world. And the same thing, Adonai Olam, call God a master, call him a producer, call him a director, call him a boss, call him a... whatever you're going to say, all those words are, as Hashem entered Seder Shtalshlus, something of this world. And then we have to tell ourselves that it's not exactly as it is by us. Let's say we say Hashem goes on chesed. So there's kindness that's limited kindness. And then there's unlimited kindness. We understand that since it's an attribute of Hashem, so therefore the kindness is unlimited. But the word kindness is kindness. We can't graduate from the word kindness. Then there's a higher level. And that's why Shem Havaya, all the other names, are names that are associated with certain channels, certain avenues, certain ways the way the Eibishter limited himself to be particular into something that we understand. But if we're talking about Shem Havaya, the word Havaya means a Havya Pshuta, an existence. Anything we're going to add to an existence is not him. Because the only thing we could say about that level is that it exists. Once we begin to define it, it's not that level. The einzige Upteich from Shem Havaya is that Sa'at nicht kein Upteich. The definition of Shem Havaya is that it has no definition. It's unlimited. Infinity itself. So it's a Shem, it's a ray, a light of Hashem, but a light which brings out Shem HaEtzem. It's something that reveals where it's coming from, its source, not where it's going to the world. It's a reflection of Hashem's infinity. And the same thing, Shem HaMeferish is the explicit name. It's Hashem in all his glory, with all his force and power, not being diluted or diminished in any way. Shem HaEtzem, Shem HaMeferish, V'Shem HaMyuchad, that's the name which is still shows on its house, mamish oir dovik ba'amoir, it's united with its source in a revealed way, because it didn't become affected at all by coming down into this world. So basically, now we understand why the Baal HaTurim emphasizes this point. Without Chassidus and without the Baal HaTurim, you might have just read it, Yivarech Hashem v'yishmerecha. The point is that it comes from God, as we'll speak soon, a simple meaning. But with the Baal HaTurim saying these words, Keneged Hashem shel arba oisius, he's emphasizing that over here it's a major point, this idea that these blessings are coming from a higher level, the highest level of blessings. And the same thing is over here, where he says, Oilama, that the end letters of the words Yivarech Hashem v'yishmerecha equal to 45, it goes on Shem Ma. So over here too, now there's no time to elaborate, but the Shem Ma and the Shem Ban, usually those are the contrast. And Ma is higher than Ban. Ban is Begematria Behema, Ruach HaBehema is Lamata. It shows on a godly level as it descends into the worlds. Shem Ma is Begematria Adam, man, Ha'ili Lamaila. It represents a light which is transcendental. So too over here. So in other words, whether it's mitzad the idea, whether it's we're talking about Shemavaya 26, shows an infinity, or we're talking about Shema, is the same idea, transcendental light, which is also the idea of a higher level of spirituality. And that's what the Rebbe basically answers. What is the novelty of the blessings over here, that all the other previous blessings that are mentioned in the Torah were not a straight up blessing of infinity, but these words are blessings of infinity. So now we see the preciousness of Birchas Kohanim, and when you want to give a blessing to somebody, say Yivarech Hashem v'yishmerecha, that includes all the blessings, straight up, infinity, unconditional. Okay, now I want to, let's land a bit more down to earth. First of all, on a moral, ethical level, we say that the Kohanim were given these blessings because b'kedushosei shel Aaron, they were sanctified with the holiness of Aaron. What is Aaron? We have Taka this week's Parshas, this week's Perek and Pirkei Avos. Haveitel mitalmidav shel Aaron, oyem shalom v'roidav shalom. Oyem v'sabrius, as explained that Aaron was the one who just loved every single being because it's a creation of Hashem and has a spark of divinity in it, and he saw that divinity. So the lessons over here are many. Number one, if you are a Kohen, a man of love, you'll be seeking to bless a person. Toiv ayin hu yivorech could mean two meanings. A person who's a generous person gets blessed from Hashem, but toiv ayin hu yivorech, somebody who has generosity is seeking to bless others. A good person who is a kind person and has generosity is always looking to give, to bring benefit to others. So you want to give blessings. Everyone should have it good. Everyone should experience only happiness, etc., etc. So what does it mean that the Kohanim were sanctified with the Shoshi Shel Aaron, that they all have this midah of chesed, of kindness, and therefore they can bless. Love begets love. When you have love and it's coming from a pure heart, from a good place, so then the blessings will only bring positivity. And another pshat, levarech esam yisrael ba'ava, is, and it's brought down, is not only that they bless out of love, out of their love, but levarech esam yisrael ba'ava, that we should have love. They give us the most important blessing before everything else, that we should have love. They give us love, that we should have love between ourselves. That there should be love reigning, residing in the Jewish people, because that will bring the greatest blessings. And that's why the last word of the blessings is v'yosem l'cha shalom. If you'll have love, then you'll come to shalom, peace. And if you have peace, then shalom is milosha shleimus. You'll be whole, you'll be complete, everything will be there. Okay. So that means if you're a person, by the way, this is like a metric. If you're a person that you consider yourself a kind person, you should be filled with a feeling that you want to bring blessings to others, bring benefit to others. Okay, now there's another point we spoke about Birchas Kohanim once before, about Kohanim and how it works. If you have Hashem, why do you need Kohanim? And I said there, and I'm repeating it over here again, but this time we're going to talk again more in Avodah and the ethical service of Hashem. Right away, the bracha says, Yivarech Hashem. But even though we're getting the bracha from the Kohanim, we're emphasizing it's a bracha that's coming from Hashem. Kohanim have no power. They're just like the bank manager. They're given, they have a special relationship with Hashem, so they have access to the divinity, and they make it in a better way. See, the other time we spoke about it, but it's not their blessing. They have zero autonomy. Just it's a conduit that the Eibishter uses to bless you, and therefore we have to emphasize that again and again. You have to always remember the blessings come from Hashem. Yivarech Hashem v'yishmerecha. But wait, there's more. We emphasize it 3 times. It's called the bracha mishaleshes, but it means chazaka. You got to knock it into your head 3 times. Yivarech Hashem v'yishmerecha. Yoyer Hashem panav elecha v'chinecha. Yisa Hashem. Yoyer Hashem panav v'yisa Hashem. It's Hashem, Hashem, Hashem. And why is it so important? First of all, they have to know that there's no power. There's only one power. Einoid milvada. Your blessings only come from Hashem. But the second point is, and this is in life, sadly. Now we're going to talk a bit about, like, al derech hadrush. The pasuk says, Yivarech Hashem, Hashem shall bless you, v'yishmerecha. So now we're not going according to the Rebbe Sicha about the infinity aspect. We're talking a simple pshat. Rashi says that he's going to guard you from thieves. The wealth that you have will be actually a blessing. That's what it means, Yivarech Hashem, v'yishmerecha. That it's not only going to be that you have a lot of money, you can have a lot of money, and one day, God forbid, curse out your money. Because if every single one of your children, God forbid, turns out to be a spoiled brat and a miser, because he was brought up in a wealthy home, but that didn't emphasize how everything you have is not your own, you are just a trustee of Hashem, then one day you might even look at it and say, it only brought me bad, not good. It shouldn't happen to any Jew. But that's one of the meanings of Yivarech Hashem v'yishmerecha. V'yishmerecha means many things. V'yishmerecha, number one, means that you should remain the same person with humility and never come to a situation, the Rabbi used to speak about many times, that the pasuk says, Koichi v'oitzim yodi oseli esachayel hazeh. Sometimes wealth brings arrogance. I'm on top of the world. I'm a millionaire. I'm a billionaire. I'm Mr. Important. As the famous song of If I Were a Rich Man. And there's many, we don't have to talk about this. This is like obvious in life. We're not talking, God forbid, against people that have money. Chas v'sholem. The Rebbe used to always emphasize, Rebbe mechabed ashirim. Rebbe used to give honor to the rich people because God gives them honor, because he trusts them with so many sparks. But now let's just speak about the other side of the coin for a second. If someone is wealthy and super wealthy, he has to be on guard. You have to bless Hashem that you should remain the same humble person and not let it go to your head. And for a second, ascribe your success to your brains and to your talent and your decisions. Yivarech Hashem. You have to remember that it was the blessings of the Eibishter, and then the request is, and the blessing is, v'yishmerecha, that you should become wealthy, but Hashem should guard you, that it shouldn't affect your humility, your character traits. And the same thing is true concerning charity, v'yishmerecha. It goes hand in hand. If you realize that it was Birchas Hashem hita'asher, if you realize that it wasn't due to your brains, and you're being a smart aleck, and you're being a wheeler and dealer, but if you realize that it came from Hashem, so then you'll be just as generous as before, and even more, because you'll demand more from yourself. And that's what it means, v'yishmerecha. In other words, you shouldn't get affected by the money, because the pasuk also says, v'yishmi yishurim v'yivat, sometimes through money a person becomes coarse. As the famous expression, don't bow down to the mighty dollar. I'm sure we spoke about this other times. on a certain level of interpretation, the Chet Egel, the golden calf, was because there was overabundance and indulgence of gold. There's a famous saying, I don't know if I ever saw it inside, but Chassidim always repeat it, and I'm sure you've heard it before. And the way the saying goes is, drei Sachen machen, there's about three things. Mashke macht shiker. If you drink mashke, you get drunk. If you drink alcohol, you get drunk. I'm a getrunken mashke, nicht geworden shiker. You drank mashke, you didn't get drunk. Man nicht getrunken genug mashke, it's because you didn't drink enough mashke. Then there's one that we're talking about now, the subject of wealth. Geld macht meshuge. Money will make you crazy. I have money, and it's nicht meshuge. Then it says, well, hast du genug Geld? It's because you don't have enough money. If you have more money, you become a sugar. It's not true. I'm here to tell you that it doesn't have to be that way, but in many cases it is. As the Rebbe spoke the famous Sikha about Howard Hughes, Yudalef Nissen Tov Lamed Vav, see there. When won't you become a sugar? Because it's v'yishmerecha. As long as you remember, number one, Yivarecha Hashem. And number two, you got the blessing v'yishmerecha, that your character traits, your humility, your generosity, your personality should not become affected by the wealth. And then you don't become a sugar. On the contrary, then you reach higher levels. Baruch Hashem. And that's the blessing. You have to remember that this is the blessing. The blessing is not the wealth. The blessing is how you react to your wealth. That it only brings you good, true good, and more good by impacting you in the right way. That you don't become changed to the negative. And the last one is Chassidus muss machen edel. Chassidus, learning Chassidus, must refine you. Mit gelernt Chassidus nicht geworden, nicht geedelt. You learn Chassidus, and you never become refined. Falls nicht gelernt genug Chassidus, you didn't learn enough Chassidus. Okay. Even though, according to the Sikh of the Rebbe, this bracha, a brichas kainim, is unconditional, but in general, we say the idea of a bracha, and I'm not talking about brichas kainim according to the Rebbe. We'll soon finish with brichas kainim, but I want to say in general about blessings, because we all have to demand from ourselves. When it comes to another person, we have to tell the Eibishter, let that person have kol tuv sela b'teiv hanirev hanigla, unconditional. That's it. But when it comes to ourselves, there's a famous Hayom Yom which says that a blessing is like rain. A bracha must have a hold in something. Just as rain benefits only the plowed and sown field, etc., then he said a waste field, unplowed and unsown, will benefit from neither soft rain nor the early or later heavy rains. So, in the Rebbe's language, if he's talking to a person, the Rebbe would always give blessings, but then the Rebbe would say to do something to make yourself a vehicle for the blessings. So we gotta, as ma'aker to mezait, you gotta sow and plow, and that makes you a conduit for the blessings. Just to give another story, which might be a bit of a harsh story. It's a very famous story, and I'm sure I said it before because I love the story in a way. But it's a message. Each one has to look inside himself, and sometimes we have to ask that we should learn it the easy way, not the hard way. And that is, there was a person that once came to the Rebbe Rashab in his first early years of his leadership, when he just became a Rebbe, and he was the one who became the Rebbe at the youngest age, 21 years old, and he became the world leader, Nasi Adar. So, right away at the beginning of his leadership, some chassid, some follower came to him and asked for a blessing and for help. And the Rebbe Rashab told him, I can't help you. Sorry. Anyways, he walked out of the Rebbe Rashab's room, and his brother, the Rebbe Rashab's brother, who was older than the Rebbe Rashab by a couple of years, was right there in the courtyard. And he met this person, and he saw this person was completely crushed, completely devastated. He asked him, what happened? He said, I just went to your brother, the Rebbe, and I asked him for a blessing, and he said, I can't help you. Anyways, the Razor, Reb Zalman Aaron, went into his brother's room and said, what do you mean? How can you tell a person he can't help but you? You must always help him. Tell him something, encouragement. Words of encouragement, words of empowerment. How can you just leave the guy hanging like that? Anyway, so then the Rabbi Rashab said, call him back. And then he gave him a blessing, and the blessing worked, obviously. And they lived happily ever after. And it was a miracle, whatever the story was. So the Rebbe asked in a Sikha, in a famous Sikha, why did it have to go like that? Why couldn't the Rebbe Rashab give him a blessing straight away? Why did he first tell him, I can't help you? And then he had to first feel crushed and devastated, and then the Rebbe Rashab helped him. And the Rebbe explained it and made the answer. Because at that point in time, the blessing wouldn't work. Because he wasn't a vehicle. That person wasn't a vehicle to receive the blessing at that time. There was none of the Akerin and Zayin. There was no plowing. A person has to be a vehicle for a blessing, or do something to be a vehicle for the blessing. When the Rebbe Rashab told him that he can't help him, that was actually the antidote, the medication, the beginning of the healing. It was intentional. The person had to go through that experience feeling that he's completely hopeless, and he really then turned to Hashem with a greater humility. Sometimes you have to go through an extreme experience to really, really turn to Hashem with all your heart. That's the way it is sometimes in life. They say some famous line in English, which I love very much, and the Rebbe Rashab actually said in Yiddish, but I don't want to say it in his words exactly. But in English, to translate it mildly, we would say, humble yourselves before you'll have to be humbled. Humble yourself before you'll have to be humbled. Because if you have to be humbled, it's going to be much more painful. So humble yourself, and you'll prevent from being humbled in some other way, which is going to be more hurtful. So in any case, I'm talking to myself now. It's the end of Yimei Tashlumim. We have to look inside ourselves, myself, and to see how can I make myself a greater vehicle for Hashem's blessings. And one thing that can be said, to make yourself a vehicle for blessings, give blessings. The Rebbe answered many people, Kol ha-mevarich mizbarich, b'brechosei shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, shetetzvasei meruba aleikeh. And I think I mentioned this once before in one of the videos, that even though my mashpiyim, Rabbi Yoel Khan, for example, or a Meir Tzibul, if you would go over to them and ask them for a blessing, they would laugh at you. I don't have the power to give blessings. And they don't want to make a tzimis about themselves, draw attention to themselves. Who am I, Bechlal? Ich bin agonish, v'anechi ofer ve'efer. And that's what you have to think of yourself on a certain level. But nevertheless, in this regard, as long as you don't think you're a rebbe, as long as you don't think you're a wizard, and as long as you don't think that you have special powers, give blessings. 100%. And why am I saying that? For two reasons. Number one, because the Gemara tells us that Alti biches hedyet kal beinecho. Do not belittle the blessings of a simpleton. So we see clearly there's a birches hedyet. I'm the hedyet. I'm a nothing and a nobody. But still I want the best for another person. That blessing has power. Wow. Number one. And number two, maybe you could say that this is the meaning of the verse. Va'atem tiuli mamlechas koyanim v'goy kodesh. The Baal Turim over this says the whole Jewish nation will be like koyanim. But maybe you could say what that means in a certain level. It's just like the koyanim are giving the power to bless. So too, every single one of us is given the power to bless. And I think the more each one of us will be a blessings machine, just keep on churning out blessings and blessings and blessings. So if we believe in the Kol HaMevarich Mizbarich, b'brechosei shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the blessings will return to you rebound, double, boomerang in all areas of life. The Rebbe should help that all the Yidden sollen sein gebencht b'chol mokem shehem and all in Yonim from Torah mitzvahs, posting from my home, be'ez Hashem Yisbarach, your man in Melbourne.